guys, welcome back to my channel. It is here, possibly the cutest DIY to grace my YouTube channel, and it is all thanks to my amazing mama, the queen of DIY. If you guys checked out my last video, it was all about our recent baby sprinkle to welcome our future daughter Evelyn, and we did a sprinkle themed baby sprinkle. But basically we did these giant DIY ice cream cones that my mother was the creative genius behind, and I just had to do a DIY video for you guys, which I promised in the last video. So it is finally here. I'm super excited to share it with you. So without further ado, here's how we made them. So these are all of the quote-unquote ingredients we'll be using to churn up this yummy ice cream DIY today. The first thing we have here is Rit fabric dye in fuchsia. This is what we're going to be using for our flavoring because we're going to be creating a strawberry ice cream cone today. The next item we have is our giant party hat. We also have a stack of coffee filters here. You can also find these at the Dollar Tree in like 150 packs, but you can get a much better deal on Amazon, which is where we got ours. These styrofoam rounds were also from the Dollar Tree. They're 2 for $1, and we'll be using this as part of our base. We also have some 12-inch balloons that we already had left over from previous parties. We have some already cut rectangles here using just regular printer paper because we're going to be doing a little paper mache. So the size and the shape really don't matter. Our box cutter and scissors, of course our handy dandy hot glue gun and glue sticks, as well as some regular craft glue. And then we also have a roll of brown craft paper that was also picked up from the dollar store, but if you have paper bags laying around, you could totally use that as well. So let's start putting this bad boy together. The first thing we're going to work on is the actual ice cream scoop. So this is where the paper mache fun will come in. But first we'll want to dye our coffee filters so we can give them a little time to dry before we put them to use. We just have a bowl with water here, and we're going to add a few drops of our fuchsia fabric dye, give it a little mix, and then take a few coffee filters at a time and give it a little soak. Then we'll throw them onto a baking tray covered with foil, and then throw them in the oven for maybe 20 to 30 minutes or so at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, flipping them every 5 minutes until they're dry. You of course could also just leave them out in the sun to dry if you have the time and patience to do that. While we have that in the oven, we're going to begin our first layer of our paper mache. So we have our balloon that's already been blown up and our cut up printer paper, and then we're going to grab a bowl of water and mix in some of our craft glue, about equal parts each. Then one by one we'll take a piece of paper, make sure it's nice and saturated in our mixture, and then lay it onto our balloon. Don't have to cover the whole balloon all the way to the bottom, and don't worry about any wrinkles. Ice cream is meant to have a little bit of texture, so the wrinkles will totally be fine. You can just smooth it out as much as possible. Then after we've finished the first layer of the white paper, we can go ahead and bring in our pink coffee filters that are now dry. Cut them into quarters so we have smaller and easier pieces to work with. We're going to be using these dyed filters for both the smooth part of our ice cream as well as that fluff around to the bottom of the scoop, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm not really sure if there's an actual name to that part of the ice cream. But anyways, only cut a handful of these coffee filters for now so we can save the rest for later. Now we'll just repeat the same process as our first layer, doing our best to cover up all of that first white layer. But we're going to be applying 2 layers of the pink so that the color blends a little bit better and our ice cream scoop is nice and sturdy. And then once our 3 layers are all complete, we'll go ahead and just set it aside to dry. In the meantime, we'll be working on the cone of our ice cream. So grab your party hat and start peeling off any fringe and strings and whatever excess adornments it might have, and gently unravel the whole thing to be used as a template. Grab your craft paper and lay the unraveled party hat on top so you can trace it out, and then simply cut it out. Now for a little added authenticity, we're going to grab our brown crayon and start drawing on some lines, which creates grid that, is on ice cream cones. I just used the width of my ruler to dictate how far apart each line was, and I also used the bottom of the crayon for more thickness instead of using the tip of the crayon, which otherwise would be more harsh, I guess you can say. It's definitely better for these lines to be a little bit more imperfect rather than thin and crisp lines. After you finish going in one direction, go ahead and crisscross back the other way. Now that that's finished, we'll go ahead and put the party hat back together, and then now we have to create our stands using those styrofoam circles. Take your cone and center it out onto one of those styrofoam rounds, and then trace how big of a hole you will need. As you can see, we've already cut out one of them. Then use your box cutter or craft knife to carve out the hole and make sure your cone is able to fit inside. This circle definitely does not have to be perfect. It's going to be completely covered up anyway. One of these rounds will be used as our base, and then the second one we're actually going to put inside of the cone to create some stability. We're going to use 3 sheets of regular printer paper to create a dowel and a barbecue stick as a guide to help us roll it. So we're going to start with just one paper at a time, rolling it fairly tight, and then add in the next sheet so that they're overlapping while we roll. Once we've got our 3 sheets of paper rolled, we're going to remove the barbecue stick, stick the paper dowel into the bottom of the cone, and then start to let it unravel itself to the size of the hole that we cut out. Inside the cone, we're going to throw in some scrap pieces of newspaper around the dowel, again, just for some added security, and then top it off with our second styrofoam round. We're going to push it down as much as we can until that bottom edge of the styrofoam is touching the inside of the cone. This way we can now grab our hot glue gun and start securing everything together. The styrofoam to the cone and the paper to the styrofoam. You'll also want to flip over the cone and add some hot glue to the bottom as well. Now that that's finished, we'll go ahead and cover it in our craft paper. First thing you're going to want to do is do your best to line it up first before applying any glue. Don't worry if it doesn't completely cover that top part, because that part is going to be covered up with our paper flowers anyway. So once I had my craft paper lined up, I actually used some tape first to keep it in place since it kept sliding around. Then I went in with my craft glue to finish it off. We decided on using craft glue for this part instead of hot glue because it gives us a little bit more leeway to smooth everything out before it dries, and we don't want any of those hot glue bumps underneath our cone. Now we have to cover the styrofoam base with craft paper using the same method. We're going to trace out the top first and then draw on those same lines with our brown crayon and then use craft glue to secure it. We're going to do just the top first, and then we're going to cover up the side of the base with a separate piece of craft paper. After that's covered, we're going to reopen that hole in the middle and then secure our cone in. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to the very bottom of the sides of the cone and then stick it in, and then I'm going to flip it over and add some more hot glue to the very bottom to secure it. Now it's time to make our paper flowers. One at a time, take your coffee filters and fold them in half 3 times. We're going to use Post-its and the edge of our table as a little sizing guide for this part. Fold maybe ½ an inch or so from that outer curve of the coffee filter over the table, and then place your first Post-it at the tip of that filter. Then add your next 2 Post-its along the side in about maybe ½ inch increments, decreasing in length from the edge of the table. So we're going to line up the tip of the filter with each Post-it, fold it at the edge of the table, and then we're going to use that crease as a guide to help us cut out curves along both edges of the filter. So that crease is going to tell us how far to cut. Then we're also going to give a little inward curve as well at that outer edge. And then at that very tip, we're going to cut off about ½ an inch. Now we're just going to repeat this process for all 3 sizes. In the end, you'll want at least 36 pieces total, 12 of each size, to create just enough flowers to surround the entire ice cream based on the size that we are currently making. again with a 12-inch balloon and this large party hat. Although honestly, I would aim for around 48 pieces total for a fuller ice cream look. Each flower is going to consist of one filter of each size. So now that we have all of them cut, we're going to take one of each size and refold each one in half, making sure that the quote-unquote petals that we've created overlap in a way where they're not actually directly on top of each other. Now we're going to take our craft glue and add a couple of dots inside each one to secure. Now add a strip of glue along the inner circle of each filter. Once you have glue on all three of them, beginning with the filter with the shorter cut petals, start rolling the bottom portion of it where the glue is. You'll want to kind of scrunch it on the bottom while rolling it too, so that the top is nice and loose, but the bottom remains tight. Once you're done rolling one, move on to the next size up and repeat. Add a little more glue when you get to the end and then give it a tight squeeze to make sure it's nice and flat, which will allow us to glue it easily later on. Give the entire flower a squeeze and then refluff it to give it the zhuzh it deserves. Adjusting the outer petals is necessary, and then go ahead and find that center petal and twist it counterclockwise while pushing inward at the same time so it's nice and tight in that center of the flower. Now that we've got all of our flowers made and the main portion of our ice cream scoop is nice and dry, we can put it all together. So start by placing the paper mache ice cream onto your cone and adjust it as necessary until it looks like it's centered all the way around. So go ahead and spin that ice cream cone around, make sure it looks good from all angles. And once you're happy with its placement, grab a pen and draw a line onto the ice cream where it meets the cone. Take that paper mache ice cream back off of the cone and start attaching your flowers using your hot glue gun. We're going to use that line we just drew as our guide, so every time we attach a flower, it's going to be on that top side of the line. If you have just enough flowers, which would be 12 for this particular size ice cream as mentioned, I would recommend very strategically gluing on each flower, so attaching one in each corner first and then filling in the remaining spaces. However, if you have a surplus of flowers, which we did, you can go ahead and just start gluing them side by side until you've gone all the way around. Once the flowers have made it full circle, we can throw our ice cream back onto our cone. So carefully place it back in so that the flowers are nice and lined up with the rim of the cone and none of those petals are stuck inside the cone. You can flip the entire thing over to make sure it's lined up properly, and once it is, go ahead and hot glue both pieces together. Don't be shy with the glue here, we want it nice and sturdy, and the flowers are going to cover up all of that glue anyway. Then flip it back over one more time and add a little more hot glue both in between the flowers and behind some of the top petals so that it hides all of that negative space that we had earlier, and it looks like it's all really connected to each other. And ta-da! Now you can go hunting for a giant spoon and dig in. You can totally have fun with customizing this project as well. We did one that was completely covered in flowers, as well as a Neapolitan flavored ice cream, which I'm absolutely obsessed with. In the previous video of our baby sprinkle, you may have also noticed the chocolate chip flavored one too. I know that I'm not exaggerating when I talk about how stinking cute those were. And all of those different flavors, so good. I know you guys love this DIY just as much as I do, but make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up. If you haven't checked out the video of our baby sprinkle, I'll be sure to include the link to that video in the description below. So make sure you check that out because you're going to want to see all the other little details of the baby sprinkle if you haven't already. If there was something from that video that you guys wanted to see a tutorial of, be sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Again, give this video a thumbs up. show my mom some love because she totally deserves all of the recognition for this amazing DIY. She's already gotten started on a few other things that I'm definitely going to be collaborating with her on. So if you're not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button and that notification button so you can make sure not to miss out on any of those. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Love ya!